There we go.
Wonderful. All right, Genesis 17. All right, take it away. We started discussing covenants. Help me recap. Last week we went into what we didn't really get far down in Genesis 17. So, how do we understand covenants for you as a believer? I'll give you a clue. It's on the board behind me.
But just from my mind, like it's the father who makes it. It's the
Right.
higher authority who makes the covenant.
Okay, so Father wants to come into a covenant with man, right? And as he establishes that a covenant, we need to understand that it's between two people. There are stipulations that are involved, right? And there are promises that are involved that normally follows with a sign. Okay? In certain traditions, there's a covenantal meal that takes place. We'll see that later. Okay? But for now, just simple breakup that as we start to understand the covenant between who it is, what's the promise, do I have to do anything to be in or stay into this covenant? And what happens, here's the sign, what happens if we break the covenant? What has to happen? There's a payment, there's an atoning sacrifice that needs to take place. There's a cost that's involved in saying, okay, we've messed up. Now how then do we fix up so that we can come back into it? And that was a big point in Genesis 15, yeah? All right, so when we looked at some of the promises of old, and we started to look at this, Genesis 12, Genesis 13, Genesis 15, and Genesis 17 promises, right? These list of promises that God gives Abraham and his descendants. I'm still going to post this. I haven't posted it on the group purely because we haven't finished the chapter. And he says, all right, this is what I need you to understand. This is what I'm willing to do for you, to how we to go together in this. This is our relationship. But with these promises come those stipulations, right? And we got really, I won't say stuck, but we started to really peel apart the idea of what this sign was and whether it was still applicable. Okay, so I'm going to read very quickly from 17 verse 1 again. Okay? It says, when Avram was 99 years old, Adonai appeared to Avram and said to him, I am El Shaddai. Roughly translated, I am your every need. Okay? Walk in my presence and be pure-hearted. I will make my covenant between me and you. I will increase your numbers greatly. Avram fell on his face and God continued speaking with him. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You'll be the father of many nations. Your name will no longer be Avram, which means exalted father, but your name will be Avraham, father of many. Because I've made you the father of many nations, and I will cause you to be very fruitful. I will make nations of you. Kings will descend from you. I'm establishing my covenant between me and you, along with your descendants after you, generation after generation, an everlasting covenant to be God for you and for your descendants after you. All right. Everybody has the term everlasting, eternal in your Bible, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. I will give you your descendants after you the land in which you are now foreigners and all the land of Canaan as a permanent possession, and I will be their God. God said to Avram, as for you, you are to keep my covenant. To keep something. To safeguard it. To hold fast to it. Understand, all of these promises are yours, but you have to keep it. To you and your descendants after you, generation after generation. Here is my covenant which you are to keep between me and you, along with your descendants after you. Every male among you is to be circumcised. You are to be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin. This will be a sign of the covenant between me and you. Generation after generation, every male among you who is 8 days old is to be circumcised, including slaves born within your household and those bought from a foreigner not descended from you. A slave born in your house and the person bought with your money must be circumcised. Thus my covenant will be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. If you have been brought into the household of faith, it's not purely part of your genealogy, that you are a physical descendant. But if you have been bought and redeemed, this is why Paul can say, through the blood of Christ, you Gentiles who were far off have now been brought into the covenants of God. He can say things like in Romans 11, you have been grafted in. These promises that led to Yeshua are now promises that you can hold on to because of that blood, because of that covenantal promise. Father is trying to tell you that you've been included into the house of Israel. Any uncircumcised male will not let himself be circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That person will be cut off from his people because he has broken my covenant. It gets to the place of, is the symbol as important to you as it is to me? And this is again one of those things. We can look at something like this and we can go, you know, that was then, this is now. God knows my heart. He truly understands how I feel about him. So therefore, if I don't do this, it's fine.
He knows it's your decision.
Yeah, I worship him in spirit and truth. I don't need to worry about this. One of the biggest shifts that you will probably have to make as a believer, as a disciple, is not focus so much on whether it's important to you, but whether it's important to him. If it's his Sabbath, not just a day I want to have off. If it's his appointed time and not just a day I think I want to celebrate. It's not focused on how I feel about the day and how I want to do it. It's important for me to make sure that he's happy that I'm celebrating it with him. This is important to him, guys. None of us were born thinking, okay, this is a good idea. None of us truly thought Friday nights were the days, Friday night to Saturday night were the days that we sit and we discuss Bible and we rest. But yet, somewhere in the midst of it, God changes your desire, changes your heart so that you get to a place where you go, actually, if he's there, that's where I want to be at. These are just one of these mitzvahs that are important to him. And for us, it should become important to us. God said to Abraham, oh, let me just backtrack there. I'm going to note up verse 9. What does your translation say there for God? Elohim. Okay? Don't you find it interesting that he goes from, in verse 1, he goes, I'm El Shaddai. And from verse 9, he goes, when he starts to say, we are to keep my covenant, and here is the covenant that you are to be circumcised, he changes the title to Elohim. Now, why would you do that? Well, partly, but is Elohim linked purely with that? That's the first place we see it.
Genesis 1.
Yeah. So if I want to tie it back to that statement or the beginning of everything, what is he really trying to tell me? Right. So what is he doing something now with Abraham?
What did she say?
It's a God of creation.
Oh, no.
He is.
Starting a new sign.
Not just creating the circumcision as a sign, but he's starting with the creation of a nation. Right? He's doing something here. And he says, listen, I'm going to do this, and through you and your seed, and this is going to be the promise, and these are going to be the blessings, and through this is going to come Yeshua. And he goes,
Is this the first instance where anyone is mentioned again, as opposed to the creation narrative?
no, I don't think so, but double check. Okay.
It's like that I'm doing a new thing in the land.
Almost. It's like, it's when he pulls it back to those, and I mean, there's so many different levels to this. When we look at the titles, right? I mean, don't get stuck on names, all right? Through a title, you're not going to define the entirety of God. Ultimately, when he gives you something like this, he's trying to show you a relationship of how he's relating to the situation or how he's relating to you. So when he tells you, listen, I am El Shaddai, what is he trying to tell you? Yeah, stop worrying about the rest of the stuff, you focus on me, I've got this.
Almighty one.
When he says, I am Elohim, if I can do all this,
And he's also in that declaring that he is the name above all names.
100%.
Yeah.
But he will use those different titles to be able to get you understand the deeper truth. So we go one more.
So my Bible here, in the the glossary, it says here, God Elohim means gods and judges.
Yeah. It gets translated as both.
Okay.
But what I want to do is not take it away just from its just definition, but I want to point it back to the text where he uses it to try and give you a better understanding of the heart. Okay? That version where he talks about Joseph will come up later in the Psalms and the Gospels, which is interesting. But for this purpose, I want you to see it's time for me to create. And it's going to be bigger than what you ever understood. He makes a statement in the beginning and things happen. Light. Separate. And you look around in creation and you go at a statement. Now if he looks to Avram and he gives promises or he gives statements and he says, this is what I need you to understand. These are the promises. Just as I uphold everything there, I am going to create and uphold everything here. Okay? So when he comes in with this circumcision, understand he links it here to the beginning of that statement where he says, circumcision, Elohim. Okay. Verse 15. God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you are not to call her Sarai. Okay? The CJB will have it in brackets say mockery. Told you the root can sometimes be taken back to quarrelsome. Her name is to be Sarah, which means princess. I will bless her. Moreover, I will give you a son by her. Truly I will bless her. She will be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. At this, Avram fell on his face and he laughed. He thought to himself, will a child be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah give birth at 90? Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael could live in your presence. He says, Father, you know what, this is amazing. He's not laughing as he can't believe. He's laughing and he's like, this is beyond my scope. And he goes, yeah, here's Ishmael. Can all those promises just not come to him? God answered, no. But Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you are to call him Yitzhak, laughter. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. But as for Ishmael, I've heard you. I have blessed him. I will make him fruitful and give him many descendants. He will father 12 princes, and I will make of him a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Yitzhak, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. With that, God finished speaking with Abraham and went up from him. Abraham took Ishmael his son, all the slaves born in his house, and all who had been bought with his money, every male among the people in Abraham's household, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin that very day. Did he hesitate? What would make a 99-year-old man without anesthetic and doctors, surgical procedures, run to go and fulfill this? And not just him. We've heard about his men before, yes? How many? 318 trained, excluding Ishmael. And he says, guys, God wants to make a covenant with us in this house. What are we going to do?
They must have
being a little bit hesitant.
I think, if we wanted to add a little bit of humor to the story, at 99 years old, someone comes up to you with a Flintstone and you say, "Hi, I've got an idea." You'd probably be hesitant. Just step into the tent. After the 20th scream, you might not think it's a good idea anymore. I don't think this was an easy decision for anybody, but I want you to understand the heart condition of Abraham. 99 years old, he runs, he gathers everybody. He said, Father's going to do something amazing. Elohim is going to create. He's going to bring life when it all seemed impossible. But to do this, and to be part of this promise, man, I'll be in.
And you were asking what made him do that. Also, it's the fear of Yahweh. I mean, we already 4 or 5 chapters from Genesis 12, where he left without a destination, without a GPS setting, and he saw the faithfulness and the faithfulness and the faith and the fear of Yahweh growing. So now it's like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to share this with everyone, but I am going ahead because I fear Yahweh.
Okay. When we say fear, elaborate on that for me.
In my own life, it is just translated it's reverence, and for me it's like a king who's also my father, and I have a picture. I have many experiences with him standing by his throne. He's got the power to sentence someone to death. That's in his authority, and we want that because we want a righteous judge because of all the unrighteousness. And at the same time, he's asking me to walk in a certain way, and I want to do that because I know that he's good, and it's such an engaging relationship. And it's the. Am I explaining?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So that's just from my own experience.
Yeah. So put it together for me. If you were sitting there and Father comes up to you and says, "Sonia, this is what I want you to go and do something," it's going to seem a little crazy.
Like going to Argentina. Sell everything and go to Argentina.
There we go. He says, in the back of your mind, are you thinking, "I better do this or else"? Or
No. I just go like, I love you, Father.
right.
Your ways are righteous, always. You always
This is what I want to thank you. Is that we get to the place where our fear is not one of understanding who He is. It's like meekness. You understand what meek is? Yeah. What does meek mean to me?
Gentleness with power.
Right. With all authority, I come in here. You see one of these giant men who can come and pick up a car and throw it across the thing, and he comes in and he shakes your hand and he's like, I know who I am. I understand the authority. I understand the power. I understand it all. But here I am. I'm going to meet you at your level. Father is coming in here and He says, and it rings in my brain every time you think of covenant. Every time He wants you to do something, He's like, I want to go show the world who I am. Are you coming? It's a process where He takes you, puts you on display, so that you can be a light that attracts people to point back to Him.
There's just a word there that must be part of that story for me, and that is surrender.
Well, you can't be in a relationship without surrender.
But I think from our Western minds, we don't think about that because we're not taught to surrender to anybody, Because the explanation that my friend in Switzerland always reminds me of meekness, is that there's a concept attached to that there's wild horses in the mountains. And the king goes out and he gets these wild horses in and he tames them for war. And the privilege that it is for these wild horses to be tamed by the king for war. He picked them. And that process is that process of meekness. I'm not less wild in terms of fervor, but I am, that wildness is a focused, purposeful for the king. But it's a submission. The starting point is submission. Which then comes back again that I go, like I always say to him, I fear you with joy because I know you're going to do a good thing in me for your namesake,
Yeah.
through me.
It's a nice illustration, but yeah, biblically it's about carrying all that weight.
Yeah, I just look at the fact of what Abraham has done and us at the start with our faith. So the first thing is you have to take that step in faith when he left his father's house.
Yeah.
And then by taking that step, he saw Sodom and Gomorrah and
That's still coming.
oh, sorry, okay, but he's seen Father's work
Yeah.
along the way. So he's seen promises fulfilled.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, 100%. He didn't jump in with Abraham at Genesis 12 and he says, now, before you leave your house and come to a place where I will show you, please circumcise everybody in your home. He said, leave your house, come and follow me, and then we build up to Genesis 13 and other promises, and then to Genesis 15, which is a big one, and now Genesis 17. He meets you at a point that he's going to expand your, or
That's what I'm saying.
as you walk out in obedience, you surrender more. You're supposed to surrender. The problem, I think, the disconnect we have is that ultimately when we say, okay, I'm going to give up everything to follow God, to become a Hebrew, to cross over, just like in the Red Sea crossing, we don't just give up our sin in the water. We give up ourselves in the water. So you see, we get to that place, so when our free will gets attached, we come out and we go, okay, God, this is how you're going to do this. Dun, 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 dun. You didn't die in that water. You with me? Right? So we have to get to the place of, Father, if this is the relationship, this is what you want from me, and then I'm all in. You have to be in a level of surrender, like Sonia said. We have to get to the place where we go, okay, Father, not my will, but yours be done. We don't understand what this is going to represent years and years down the line. But because it's important to you,
Yeah.
because this is attached to your promise, because you want me to be part of this work that you're going to do, me and my household, Lord, where do you want us? It's ultimately it. At 99 years old, guys, I'm tired, I'm done. It's been real. I've had a good, long life.
Now it's time for golf.
And Father's like, no, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
You with me?
There's something interesting about what I read, and it really makes sense to me. With the name change, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh gave Sarah and Abraham the two H's in his name.
Right.
It was like also part of the covenant that you take on the covenanter's name. Yeah, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the two A's, Sarah and Abraham.
So traditionally, even in modern day Judaism, there would be, if you were to convert, or Magai in this sense, Magai means to convert, that I would then completely die, and as I came up, I would be given a new name, because the old person is gone. Right? Part of this process here is not just so much as the death of the old, but the function that changes in you. And if we go back to this hey, in the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, in God's name, what does this represent to us?
The gate.
Hmm?
Gate. Door.
No, that's the delek,
Oh, the
Ring.
to reveal.
The
Apocalypto.
whole look, reveal, and breathe. Yeah.
Where we get in a sense here.
Like,
It's a revelation of. So if Father's going to reveal something about himself, he's doing it through Abraham and Sarah. He's going to take you from where you were and make you into what you're supposed to be.
yeah.
Your function, in a sense, changes. So it's the revelation of God in your life that he's going to go, show them me.
Yeah.
You with me?
And that's the same concept. Creation is waiting for the sons of Yahweh to be made manifest. That's apocalypto, to reveal.
Yeah.
So there's something in us already. So it's not about trying to become something, but it's about remembering what's
Well,
already there.
It's a yes and a no. Because when we give up our life in totality, when Father created you, He created you with a purpose, right? But in the midst of it, your identity gets caught up with a whole bunch of different things. Your own plan, sin, and everything gets broken from that reality. So when I die, when I get baptized, and I let go of everything that I was, in a sense, I'm going back to find out, Father, you created me for this purpose. What am I supposed to be? In the midst of that, okay, well, let's stop there. What were you supposed to be? Don't over-spiritualize it with your giftings.
His
Okay?
child.
That's the discipleship motif. What were you always meant to be?
His witness.
You know, that's function.
Relationships.
His child.
Let's-
His child.
Very simple. Sons and daughters of the Most High. Very simple. Your first base point is, have you met my father? I challenge guys from time to time when we introduce ourselves, what's the first thing that comes up to me? Oh, so who are you? Oh, well, you know, I used to do this. Oh, well, you know, I actually, you know, I'm like this. I say, when's it going to happen when it comes out of your mouth and you go, oh, well, you know, Joe, who are you? Oh, you know, I'm the son of the Most High. Sorry?
People think you're really crazy.
Well, sometimes we need that little bit of a push, because if I do not let that identity sink into me, how am I going to ever reflect? You've got the whole world telling you who you are and what you're not. And you've got God saying, listen, you're either going to listen to them or you're going to listen to me. Part of that baptism is coming up into really understanding that identity. From there, as I start then on my journey, like Joshua, He puts you through situations where I like to call it, gives you on-the-job training. In the midst of that, He equips you with different spiritual gifts. And in your call, as a witness, as a disciple, as something where you're learning on how to surrender, walk, keep, safeguard, obey, building up a faith. In that process, you act more like son or daughter. To the point of, I'm on my way home. You guys coming? It's a simple truth. We overcomplicate it. We get so focused on the manifestations of the Spirit, we forget the presence of it. We get so focused on the call, we forget the identity. This is where we get those verses that should scare you silly and said, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we cast out demons in your name? I'm doing all of this stuff, Lord. I'm walking in your authority. And He goes, get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you.
It reminds me of in the New Testament about that we must act as sons and not as servants,
But
as
then again,
heirs.
no, but that's identity.
In
right?
Him, yeah.
So if I'm now getting into my brain, Shabbat, let me take it back to your rabbi for a second. Yeshua at 12 years old probably taught us more than what we could probably understand with a simple statement. He gets lost. Where do they find him?
In His Father's house.
When, what was his statement? It is like Miriam and Joseph are having a little bit of a moment. Where were you? What do you think you're doing? Good old parents, everybody's freaking out. Can you imagine losing the Messiah? It's a bit of a problem.
Didn't He say, why are you, didn't He ask them, like, why are you,
He didn't ask them why. He says, did you not know
oh yeah,
that I would be my father's house,
About my father's business.
doing my dad's business? He says, guys, now, are you about daddy's business? Abraham ran at 99 years old to be about father's business. I love that. Everything in his household. Sorry, give me a second. Remember when we started in Genesis 1? What was the first letter in your Bible? When God decides to create or start His story, writes it down, He starts it with a bet. For the word Bereshit. Wouldn't it be more theologically exciting to start with the Aleph and end with the Tav? Now, if I started with it, then I would. But he didn't. He started with a bed. What does bed mean?
House.
Tent house family inside.
It's all about the house. It's all about the family. Can you guys just get your wake up already?
Oh, nice.
It
Yeah.
also be son.
It comes from the root thereof. But ultimately, it points back to identity, does it not?
Yeah.
You want to be about daddy's business? Let's be about daddy's business. You want to understand your father? You want to reflect your father? Well, this is his business. Shabbat, it's not important to me. It's important to him
Yeah.
first, and then it becomes important to me. And with every mitzvah you apply, you get to the point where we go, is this important to the Father? If it is, and my heart's not in it, I better step in line. I want to be about daddy's business. I am his son. I am his daughter. I am a disciple. I'm here walking the walk because it's important to him. Where am I going? Home. I'm on my way to my Father's house. Whether you want to spiritualize that or whether you want to talk about it from age, we're all going to end up standing before his feet. I'm just going to try and, as I walk, tell other people about him, teach people about him, share as much as I can about him, because this is who I am. Your identity shifts. And it's not so much about now, Father, not what you can give me or how you can meet me at my need. It's now, Father, you said circumcision and I have a flintstone. 320 people maybe.
How do you share that news?
I'm not holding back.
Yeah. Can I quickly just share a testimony about being at my father's business? I was once in a DVD shop. Remember those ones? And I was in the back of the shop, and I saw this guy passing with his little boy. And as he was talking, he came into the DVD shop, and he was just mocking our Father and using his name in such a very, very bad way, you know. And I was just like, you know, who is this uncircumcised Philistine, you know? Like, I got this like thing, so I was standing right at the back, and the next moment, he was behind me. And I looked at him, and at that point, I saw he had a boy. And I said to him, you talk in front of your child like that? And he said to me, mind your own business. And I turned around and I said to him, I'm minding my Father's business. This guy started manifesting in front of me, like demonically manifesting. He knew exactly what I was talking about. I got out there, like I thought, like, let me go. And by the time my car was parked right in front of it, and when I was sitting, he was standing by the door, and he was like, I could see his lips moving and everything, and my lips were moving as well, you know, because, but I was just like, the Father's busy, and they know.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
And why would we, isn't it amazing, in all of creation, the demons understand who is God and who is authority. They understand, you know, when Yeshua preached up with a man who had legion. Well, we're slightly off topic for that. And this man known as Legion comes running towards him. Notice Yeshua parked his boat exactly where to find him. If you were a disciple, you're in the wrong part of town. He comes screaming, runs up to him, and falls at his feet. He understood.
And he said, Son of God.
He knew Yeshua's identity. He says, do not come to torture us before the appointed time. He understood. Why are we the ones that are playing catch up? All of creation knows who God is and what He's called you to.
It's the rule. That's the problem.
That brings us back to the point of surrender.
I mean, it doesn't help. It doesn't help you anyway whatsoever if you say, I believe, because the demons believe as well and shudder and tremble. They believe in His existence. They know who He is. So, you know,
This is
and they
why-
shudder and tremble, but there's so much more. You've got to have a relationship.
This is why James has that reality. He says, faith without works is dead. If you will just take a moment, take a lesson from our that identity in His covenant with His Son standing there on behalf of, going, I know who I am. I know my God. He ran to the fullness in His obedience.
And those who know their God will do great exploits. We were designed for them. Those who, what is that? Hebrews?
Yeah.
Those who know their
With that.
God will do great exploits.
Okay, so let's
Okay.
get back into Genesis, so those are going to stay stuck here for a while. Genesis 24, Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old, and he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Abraham and Ishmael his son were circumcised on the same day. There was no hesitation in obedience. And all the men of his household, both slaves born in his house and those bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. This is not just a physical descent reality. This is a spiritual thing. It is teaching you, if we are going to be part of Israel, we have, Christ brings me back into the covenants with Israel. Your responsibility, your promises. If you would just run. Not from, but to. Okay? Any questions about that? Alright, chapter 18. Adonai appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the entrance of his tent during the heat of the day. He raised his eyes and looked, and there in front of him stood 3 men. On seeing them, he ran to the tent door to meet them, prostrated himself on the ground and said, "My Lord, if I found favor in your sight, please don't leave your servant. Please let me send for some water so that you can wash your feet and rest under the tree. And I will bring a piece of bread. Now that you have come to your servant, refresh yourselves before going on." "Very well," they replied, "do what you have said." All right, so we've got some interesting little questions here. Can anyone, what's the verse I'm looking for? Let me jump quickly to Exodus 33. From verse 17.
33:17.
Yes, sir. Exodus 33, verse 17. So this is part of the negotiations just after the golden calf, okay? And then it says, Adonai said to Moses, "I will also do what you have asked me to do because you have found favor in my sight and I know you by name." But Moses said, "I beg you to show me your glory." Your translation?
Your esteem.
Your esteem, okay? He replied, "I will cause all my goodness to pass before you, and in your presence I will pronounce the name of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Moreover, I show favor to whomever I will, and I display mercy to whomever I will. But my face," he continued, "you cannot see, because a human being cannot look at me and remain alive. Here," he said, "is a place near me, stand in the rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in the inside of a crevice, or the cleft of the rock, and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face is not to be seen." Go back to Genesis 18.
So what about all the worship songs that goes like, "We want to see your face"?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now if Exodus 33:17 is true, and Abraham sees Adonai, he runs up to him and he bows. Help me understand. What am I missing?
Big question.
I think when all that Bible there was building himself, it was in all his glory to Moses. That's why he couldn't see him face to face. He couldn't see his incredible glory. But here, he came as a man to
that's important. Can we go to Isaiah 6? From verse 1. We're going to read from Isaiah 6, verse 1 to 8. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw Adonai sitting on a high lofty throne. Isaiah sees Adonai sitting on his throne, right? The hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphim stood over him, each with 6 wings, 2 covering his face, 2 covering his feet, and 2 for flying. They were crying out to each other, more holy than the holiest holies, or holy, 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 is Adonai Tzevaot. The whole earth is filled with his glory. The doorposts shook at the sound of their shouting, and the house was filled with smoke. Then I said, woe to me, I too am doomed, because I am a man with unclean lips, living among a people with unclean lips, who have seen with my own eyes the King, Adonai Tzevaot. One of the seraphim flew to me with a glowing coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. He touched my mouth with it and said, here, this has touched your lips. Your iniquity is gone. Your sin is atoned for. Exodus 33. Now, he's not in a human form, which is important. We need to understand that, because that sort of helps us deal with another group of questions. Go to Ezekiel 1. We're going to read from verse 26, Ezekiel 1:26. Ezekiel 1, verse 26.
Great.
Says, above the dome, which was over their heads, was something like a throne that looked like sapphire on it, and above it was what appeared to be a person. I saw what looking like gleaming amber-colored fire radiating from what appeared to be his waist upward. Downward from what happened to be his waist, I saw what looked like fire, giving a brilliant light all around him. This brilliance around him looked like a rainbow in a cloud on a rainy day. Noah, right? This is how the appearance of the glory of Adonai looked. When I saw it, I fell on my face and I heard the voice of someone speaking. Okay, so let's put them together. What is Moses really asking? In everything. Okay, now to look at someone in that sense, Moses was asking to see him in everything, in the fullness of his glory. Right? Now, it's almost, the word that gets used here is not only to look at, but to look in intently and also understand. To perceive in his fullness. And Father says it's impossible.
I have a question. The times that Moses went up Mount Sinai, 40 days in the presence of Yahweh, and even the light was emanating from him when he came back.
Yes.
I think he went up a couple of times and was in the presence of Yahweh. Did he? The Torah doesn't say. How did he survive that? Because he must have seen him in his esteem, or was he taken into another realm? And he didn't even need food and water, and
Yeah, we're getting to the place of how does it all work.
yeah.
Okay? And what seems to me is that when Father was sitting over there, he was sustaining us. I don't think he was caught up like Isaiah and Ezekiel were obviously into the third heaven and went, okay, this is where we're going to be, in the throne room. But it seems as well that even in the midst of the throne room, there seems to be this distance where God doesn't show the fullness of who he is. He gives you that image, and then when that hits you, as Ezekiel or Isaiah reflects, I fall flat on my face, or I go, woe is me, I'm an unclean man living among people with unclean lips. I should not be here. This is holiness, this is me.
I'm done.
And you realize how far and how distant you are from the true holiness that is God. Now we have in part, like with Genesis 18, where God squeezes himself into human form to come and have, he's generally just walking past. I love that sort of detail. He's not just, oh, there's Abraham's tent, I'm just going to go say hi. He's in a place where he sees him, he knows Abraham is sitting at the entrance, there he is over there, and he watches Abraham's response. The reason he's doing this is he's actually setting up the next chapter. Okay? But we have other examples where God squeezes himself into a form, like who wrestled with Jacob. Right? He says he named the place Peniel, which means I have literally seen the face of God. And he marvels that he's still alive. There are many times that they will go, I've seen him, but I don't think the fullness of him. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so when we're dealing with this moment where you will have, it's actually one of Judaism's, one of their big questions when dealing with Christians. And they will say, how for God to come into human flesh is just doesn't make sense. It's just not biblical. I'm going to point you to Genesis 18 and say, well, this seems to be very biblical. With Jacob wrestling with God seems very biblical. The fact that now we want to allude it to the Son, and we go, that's impossible, God doesn't put himself into human flesh, you're ignoring what was written in the text. Okay, so that's why I'm pointing that out. To understand the fullness of God, I don't think we will be able to do that until we are completely restored in new bodies and all iniquity in that has been done.
And glorified because of his presence.
Right.
And we can actually handle.
Yeah, you won't be falling flat on your face every time you see him. You will be worshipping. Well, you might fall on your face, but it won't be in the same way.
Yeah.
If I can just put it that way.
Vince, when Adam and Eve, before the original sin, they actually
Walk with God in the garden, yeah. But it doesn't say that he was in a human form.
No.
So then it becomes, oh well, we don't really know, so therefore it can't be a human form.
But they were sinless at that stage.
Also, but
I think that also made a difference.
But they also seemingly had not eaten from the tree of life either. So it was kind of like, this is where I haven't chosen life, and I ended up choosing the other. You guys understand where I'm getting that from? Right? They kicked him out of the garden and they said, lest they eat from the tree of life and they stay in the state forever. So it didn't look like they'd eaten from it before, even though Father said you can eat of every tree, but stay away from that one. It makes the question, it's like, why did they never eat of the life?
Yeah, I was saying, why didn't they just go for the other tree? But then,
That's not the one they were deemed to do.
So isn't it funny that the one thing that you're not allowed to do, you end up running to do?
What
So you can apply that to many different little stumbling blocks you have in your life now personally. One of them being your identity. You will believe the negative one. And God will give you all of these promises and all of these things, and you will go, oh yeah, but I can't be that because I'm not rich enough, I don't understand the text enough, I don't remember enough,
my pain is too big.
my pain is too big, I keep on, I mess up from time to time, and you use whatever you need to do to jumble the idea of that you're actually a daughter or a son of Christ. But remember, God does not make mistakes. He called you that because of the blood of Christ. That's who you are, blood of Christ. And therefore, this is what should be the response. It's relational. ultimately it's always going to come down to relationship. How I relate to him. Right? Just like in Hebrew, when I say my son, in English isn't the way you translate it from Hebrew. Hebrew is Benny. He's a son to me, is how they say it directly. The reason he's a son to me is because he relates to me as his father. It's not my wife. I don't own her. She's a wife to me. The difference between her acting like a wife and any other woman relationship that I have is that she alone acts like a wife too. It's part of our relationship. So when I say my God, or El Shaddai, or Elohim, you get the picture? Okay. So, back to Genesis. Yeah.
So can I just add something there? And also this thing about when we try to relate to El Shaddai or as the Father,
Yes.
and how our earthly idea of an earthly father or no father
Yeah.
influences it. That was my battle. That's what sent me into New Age for 20 years because of my relationship with my earthly father until
Yeah.
today. And I couldn't understand, I sort of superimposed that over the idea of a heavenly father. And I was like, I'm not interested because
Yeah.
whatever reasons, yeah. And to actually let go of that, to literally like take off that, it's been a long journey.
It is a process, and I mean that's why it's so important that for men that you stand up in your home and you act because you're reflecting that. Just like
Yeah.
as a husband you're reflecting Christ, and as a wife you're reflecting the bride of Christ. There are these relationships that when we get it wrong, we do damage to the reputation or the reflection of it.
The next generation.
But when we get it right, the opposite is true. Okay, so back to Genesis 18. So he said, again, Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not leave your servant. And then he goes, just let me go fetch a piece of bread and you come and sit and relax a little bit. And God said, okay, fine, we'll stop and we'll have a breakout with you. Verse 6. Abram hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, quickly 3 measures of the best flour, knead it and make cakes. Yeah.
When I read that,
Mm.
I looked it up and I just remembered Matthew 13, where Yeshua he starts giving parables. And he said, another parable he spoke to them, the rain of the heavens is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal until all was leavened. Is there it's actually a reference
Yeah.
to Sarah's 3
What was he teaching in Matthew 13?
He was actually teaching that Sarah,
No.
that
First,
they were
Before we hone in on the big one, you will understand when the rabbi speaks, he's giving you the bigger picture. What's the bigger picture?
that heaven came to visit Abraham.
No, that's the small picture.
Okay, the small picture, all right.
What's the big picture? What is he trying to help you understand?
Can you tell me, please? Just remember the scripture, but
Very good. Okay? He's talking about the kingdom of heaven.
yeah.
Okay. So when we don't know, now he's trying to say, okay, the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of heaven is like. We need to get to the place where we go, all right, well, what is it about this parable or this story that sticks out to Christ when he says, this is, when I want you to think of the kingdom, this is what we're doing. Now to do that, we have to understand 2 things. So let's see if you've paid attention over the many teachings that I've given you. When a rabbi speaks, he speaks in parables, correct? One of the rabbinic tools that we have from that time, what types of parables do you get?
Remezes.
No, the remez is a link.
Oh, sorry.
What types of parable?
You did the pearly one.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, what we call a string parable. Okay, which is like a pearl necklace. Each story is linked by a little thread.
Is it all linked to the Torah?
In many cases, you can do that. Remember, he taught nothing else. He used the Tanakh as illustration. His main subject was, let's talk about the kingdom of heaven. Oh yeah, let me tell you about this. And let me look at this. He used creation and other things. Very much a typical rabbinic understanding. Now, follow me here. Luke 15 is your typical pearl necklace or string parable setup. Okay? Go there quickly. Luke 15. There for revision. Right? You're going to see a list. You should have a list of parables there, right? That ultimately are going to go down to the parable of the prodigal of the lost son. Am I in the right chapter? I hope so. Yeah? Remember, don't believe Vince, read one. So, what is the first parables he starts to bring up to you in Luke 15? Okay? Sheep.
I heard sheep one.
Okay? So what's the thread then? This is one of those pearl necklaces. It starts off with sheep. And he goes?
Isn't it the coin?
There's a coin one as well. Same thing.
10 pieces of silver. And then the other coin.
What's the thing?
Do
He
something.
was,
Two
one,
sons
is
is
just as important as all the others.
Here's the thing. Something gets lost. Something gets found. The result is
Rejoicing.
rejoice. Party. Lead you up to the parable of the prodigal. He gets lost. He gets found. Father rejoices. What does the older brother do? Stop.
Self-seed.
He gets grumpy. No rejoicing. Who was he talking to when he started this whole collection of parables? To the Pharisees. So he's sitting there, he looks at them and he goes, well, why is it when people are coming home, you know rejoice? And we're focusing on each individual parable as if we understood it. He's talking to specific people having a specific discussion. He says, you guys are coming in here, you see they're coming home, they're safe, they're alive. What's wrong with you? And all you're doing is moaning. Those sinners, those people. They're making teshuvah? Yes. Are they coming back into the kingdom? Yes. What's your problem? Yeah, but they told God they didn't need him and he took all his money and he ran off and he lived like a crazy person out and he spent his money on drunken debauchery and mirth. Hello? Which one of you did not? And we get to the place that we come in. What is Father doing? Rejoicing. What is everybody else doing? Oh no, those people have to come into our church. Do not get stuck in it. Remember, he is addressing our heart condition with those people. Right, Matthew 13. Matthew 13, dealing with the kingdom of heaven. It's what they call a step parable. Basically, each little trapi, each little step is going to teach you something new. Same thing. It's the same as if I were to go, the kingdom of heaven is like this. Okay? And I show you just one side of the box. And then I go, but the kingdom of heaven is like this. And then I go, but the kingdom of heaven is also like this. But the kingdom of heaven is also like this. But the kingdom of heaven is like this. So what I'm showing you is different sides of it. And when we open up into Matthew 13, we see Genesis 18 used in a little drop. One little remez, one little link. It says you took 3 measures or 3 se'as of flour. Now, how much is 3 measures?
Joe looked it up last night and apparently it could feed 100 people.
More.
Oh,
They say it was enough to feed the entire camp of Abraham. Over 300 people. God comes in. What do? Bake bread.
have a party.
Why? To break bread with God in your tent. This isn't a dry morsel of bread, but look how far they go. Okay, now that you've got the kingdom of heaven parable in the back of your mind. Quickly, he says, verse 6, 3 measures of best flour, knead it and make cakes. Verse 7, Avram ran to the herd, took a good tender calf, or the fattened calf, and gave it to his servant, who hurried to prepare it. Then he took curds, milk, and the calf which he had prepared, and set it all before the men. Pause. We're having a feast, number one. What's on the menu?
Meat and milk.
Meat and dairy. Uh-oh. Okay. Right. In Judaism, they will teach you that according to an instruction, it says you shall not mix, or you not mix,
Cook.
boil a kid in its mother's milk. The takeaway was a rabbinic understanding, and they said, I think it means that we shouldn't have meat and dairy in the same place. So today, when they say it's a kosher kitchen, understanding, your understanding and their understanding will be different. A kosher kitchen means that you will never get a cheeseburger. Rabbinic. You will never be able to order a milkshake and a steak at the same place. Unfortunately, I believe they got this wrong. The interpretation. Unfortunately for them. Fortunately for you. Alright? What we understand was boiling a kid in its mother's milk was only ever referenced, the only reference we found besides Torah was in an archaeological site in the city of Ugar. They call it the Ugaritic texts, and it was a city run by Canaanites. They boiled kids in its mother's milk as a fertility rite. So I believe many of Torah, like I've discussed with you before, is telling you, you don't do it like the Egyptians, you don't do it like the Canaanites, you don't do it like this, you do it like we do.
Like the cutting.
It all had a specific, don't act like that. Okay? And if you go look at many of the references, he's warning them against being Egyptian or acting like Egyptian and claiming it to be. What would we call this movement here, the Hebrew? Someone in covenant with God, a God-fearer. Because this isn't Judaism in its state right now.
It's not even Israel.
Exactly. So when he says, listen, even when they come out, Moses makes sure there's them and there's us. And everything we do reflects holiness and God and love and the redemptive plan. Your identity as sons and daughters. And then you get them. Don't mix the two together. This is where the golden calf went wonky. They weren't just worshipping an idol. They said, here is the God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. They attributed God to in the shape of an idol. Basically, we do the same in many shapes and forms. We take our viewpoint and our understanding and we say, this is God. And a lot of it isn't based on the text. So you make your own one.
I also, when I read that scripture the first time about boil a kid in his mother's milk, like just when I got saved, I understood something about the character of the father in that as well.
Everything will point back to the character.
That because that's kind of cruel.
It
You
is.
know? So it's kind of, and I was like, oh, he's like,
Well,
Like,
think
don't
about
do
it.
that,
That
you
which
know.
is supposed to, if you take it back to El Shaddai, that which is supposed to sustain is the very thing that kills you.
I know and he's like, don't do that. And of course, that's what those people will do because the character of their gods requires perversity, basically.
Yeah,
You know? And
I-
that's not the character of the father.
100%. And ironically, they came down to fertility.
Yeah, how funny. I mean, ironic.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So you with me? Okay. I don't know why we went. Oh wait, we were talking about Sarah, right? Okay. So he serves it all together. I've heard one argument that they said no, they served the milk and the cheese first, and they waited an hour, and then they served. Guys, I'm just going to read that verse again, and you tell me if that's what you took away from it. It says, Avram ran from the herd, verse 7, took a tender calf and gave it to the servant who hurried to prepare it. Then he took curds, milk, and the calf which he had prepared and set it all before the men, and he stood by them under the tree as they ate. I think it's quite clear.
But I just want to ask something here. I mean, they keep on saying, yeah, quickly, but to kill a calf, right, you still have to bleed it. That takes about
Yeah,
time.
this-
So how does quickly fit into this?
This ultimately we're pulling this apart, but ultimately what we should be seeing is typical Middle Eastern hospitality. Okay? I've told you before today, they actually take tourists and make arrangements for certain Bedouin people, and you can walk up to them and you can say, hi. They see you coming, they run to you, they don't speak a word, they'll bring you in, they'll entertain you, they'll feed you, you'll be part of every celebration for 3 days. After 3 days, they say, thank you very much for coming, and they kick you out. This wasn't just a hospitality of come and have a quick meal. For Avram, he was setting up shop, and he says, my home is your home. The kingdom of heaven is when God comes in and he sits and he sleeps where you sleep. You break bread together, you celebrate together. This is my family. You have your intimate discussions.
Yeah.
Shall we on? But would be something that carried on for a few days. Okay? It's probably not going to last 3 days from what we can see in the timeline here. But for Avram, just come and rest your feet a while meant come and spend a couple of nights.
Maybe the use of the word quickly might have just been an indication of Abraham's desire to obey and to serve and to everything, and it might also be like the way that Matthew uses suddenly. Everything in Matthew is more suddenly. It's like maybe this is the way that the writer interpreted it or expressed it.
But he does. He definitely wants to get this out. But also, I want you to remember he's setting up the next chapter. Okay. So.
Hallelujah for next chapters, says the writer.
Okay, where are we? Verse? Set it down before the men in 8 verse 9. They said to them, where is Sarah your wife? He said, there in the tent. He said, I will certainly return to you around this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son. Sarah heard him from the entrance of the tent behind him. Abram and Sarah were old, advanced in years. Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself, thinking, I am old, and so is my Lord. Am I to have pleasure again? Adonai said to Abram, why did Sarah laugh and ask, am I really going to bear a son when I am so old? Hers was more about one of disbelief. Abraham's laughter was, I can't believe this is actually happening. Is anything too hard for Adonai? And I want you guys to remember that becomes a theme when running through the wilderness, as well as with Moses and Passover and so on, and it's something that carries on through. Is anything too difficult for your God? At this time set for it, at this season next year, I will return to you, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah denied it, saying, I didn't either laugh because she was afraid. He said, not so, you did laugh. The men,
She lied.
well,
And instantly forgiven.
But
is it Mr. Father?
Well, that also means
It's like, come on, kid.
89 years old, right?
Like, come on. Right? There's moments with God where you try to get out of it and you try and justify, and He looks at you and He goes, come on. He goes, no, let's talk about this. What were you really asking, or what were you really doing? No, I went in to go and help them. Mm-hmm. No, you didn't. It's the same as when He was sitting in the garden. Where are you?
He knew.
Yeah. There's this moment of actually, listen, are you going to come clean up? Right? The men set out from there and looked over towards Sodom. And Avram went with them to see them on their way. Adonai said, should I hide from Avram what I'm about to do? I want you to see fathers trying to test his response. Inasmuch as Avram is sure to become a great and strong nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by him, for I have made myself known to him so that he will give orders to his children and to his household after him to keep the way of Adonai, We're going to come back to that in a second. And to do what is right and just, so that Adonai may bring about for Avram what he has promised him. Right. I think I'm gonna put a pin in it there at verse 20 because we're gonna go into something else. The way. I should immediately understand where I'm going with this.
What was the third string, third paragraph? Yeah, you mentioned two there. There was
No, so
three.
there are two different types of parables.
Oh, is there two different? Okay.
That's what I'm doing. I think they cleared it with terms or something before. Thank you. All right. So, if we were to tie this back in, go to John 14, verse 6. John 14, verse 6, and Messiah teaches us something there.
Need some extra fingers.
John 14.
You can leave Genesis for now. I think that's where we're probably going to fall. I want to do a couple of references. I'll be very surprised if we get back to Genesis today. But I'm okay with that. John 14, verse 6 teaches us.
Jesus said to you, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
The way, the truth.
The life.
What is it? John 14.
John 14, verse
Verse
6.
6.
Oh, 6.
And the life. Let me do that. Okay. So there's some interesting little remezes. Remember remez? So it's a link back to like a quote. So when I say to you, for God so loved the,
World. Son.
now if you were really good disciples, I would ask you to carry on quoting until we finish the book of John.
Hey.
Right? If I were to say to you the way they remember they studied in portions, if I said fantastic, you know John 3:16, what's John 3:14? What's John 3 about? So John 3 talks about Nicodemus and how am I going to be born again. John 3:14 talks about the Son of Man being lifted up just like the snake in the wilderness. John 3:16 comes in. So if I quote John 3:16, the rabbi will expect you to, what I'm really asking you is Nicodemus. Okay? So we have to understand the context. So when you go back and you look at a quote, I want you to go back and I want to look at the context of what we're saying. That's why generally what I will do is I'll go, okay, look, let's look at this a little bit back and then we will read. My point is verse 20, but we're going to read from verse 17, just to give you a little bit of context. Where I will mention, okay, this chapter is about this, but we're honing in from this for the sake of time. Okay? So when we start to link these things together as Yeshua did, we go, okay. When we talk about the way, you've already seen now one illustration of that way was Genesis 18, right? We read it. Okay? Someone go to Psalm 119, verse 1. Sonia, will you do that one for me?
Yeah.
Joe? Psalm 32, verse 8. Leslie? Exodus 18, verse 20. Don't worry, I'm going to write them down. Psalm 119, verse 1. Psalm 32, verse 8. And Exodus 18, verse 20. Okay, when we are ready.
You see Job as well?
No.
Can I please also read the description I wrote for undefiled? Okay. So Psalm 100 and everybody ready? Okay. Psalm 119 verse 1. Blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law of Adonai. Undefiled there is tamim, which I think is also the word for face, right?
Tamim is clean. Tamim means clean.
Clean, yeah.
Yeah.
To be complete, to be whole, to be entire, to be sound, to be innocent, to have integrity, and to be complete in accord with the truth and fact.
Right. So to be in oneness with the way, which is what did Psalm verse 1 say? It says the way, which is? Read the verse again.
Okay, blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law of Adonai.
To walk in the law, in the Torah.
In the Torah, yeah.
Okay. 32. Psalm 32. Verse 8.
32 verse 8. Let me instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. Let me counsel. My eye be on you.
Teach, instruct.
Instruct in the way. In Torah.
Teaching and instruction. Instruction is one of those root words for Torah.
Yeah.
Exodus 18 verse 20.
And you warn them as to the statutes and the laws of the Torah, and make known to them the way in which they should walk, and the work in which they should do.
Yeah, statutes and the Torah. So when we read and the word became,
Flesh.
it's funny that the way, follow me in the way, is really just leading us back to Torah. Okay? Read Mrs.
I always put Deuteronomy 4 verse 5.
You want to read it first? Deuteronomy 4 verse 5 for those who want to double check.
See, I have taught you statutes and ordinances in Yahweh, my Elohim, has commanded me to do them in the midst of the land where you are going in to possess it. That's the law.
So yeah, what we want to look is the way in language. Okay?
Yeah, I think my other one, I think if you read it in that one, it says laws. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one says it different.
Yeah. Okay, but we really want to tie in what you're saying is right. But anytime someone references the way the Bible defines it is pointing you back to the instruction and the teaching of God. Alright? If we go to truth,
Can I just ask something?
yeah.
When it's in Deuteronomy, when it says so that you can walk in that way to possess the land, does it also not mean for us to walk in that way to possess?
100%. And then it comes down to obedience. It's part of the covenant reality. Okay? These are just a couple. I didn't go exhausted here, right? But when you look at it, when he says, I put before you blessing and curse, life and death. It's also, this is the way in which you should walk. So when Yeshua looks at it, he goes, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The way, if I was someone who was schooled in Scripture, I've heard about the way before, but the way is Torah, so you must be the word.
Yeah. And
Okay.
the beautiful scripture stand at the crossroads and ask the ancient way.
Yeah, Jeremiah 6.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Psalm 119, verse 142,
I'm there.
please. And then again, Psalm 119, verse 151.
Okay, so Psalm 119, verse 142 is your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is the truth.
Coming back to Torah. Torah is truth.
Yeah.
151.
Yeah.
Near,
Uh,
near, Yodai and all your commands are truth.
All your commands are truth. So it comes back again to Torah. He is the Word made flesh. If He's telling you in the way you should go, biblically what I'm telling you is get back to the basics. Go back to the beginning of the book. Okay? Life. Deuteronomy 30. Verse 11 to 20. And Deuteronomy 32. Verse 46 to 47. Right, anybody read to me there?
From verse 11.
Yes, please.
Deuteronomy 30, verse 11. For this command which I am commanding you today is not too wonderful for you, nor is it too far off. It is not in the heavens that you should say, we shall go up into the heavens for us, and bring it to us, and cause us to get it, that we may do it. And it is not beyond the sea that you should say, we shall cross over for us to the region beyond the sea, and take it for us, and cause us to get it, that we may do it. For the word is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it.
Okay, go into 20.
What verse?
And I'm there.
Yeah.
And he said to them, set your hearts on the words which I have testified against you today, that you command your sons to take heed to do all the word of this Torah.
Okay.
Right.
Am I missing something?
Ja. Ek lees tot by 20. Okay, sorry. Verse 15. Behold, I have set before you today life and good and death and evil. In that I am commanding you today to love Yahweh, your Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, and you shall live and multiply. And Yahweh, your Elohim, shall bless you in the land where you are going into possess it. But if you turn away your heart, and you do not listen, and are impelled to even bow down to other gods and serve them, I have declared to you today that you shall certainly perish. You shall not prolong your days in the land to which you are crossing the Jordan, to go in there to possess it. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore, choose life, that you and your seed may live, to love Yahweh your Elohim, to listen to his voice, and to cleave to him. For he is your life and the length of your days, so that you may live in the land which Yahweh has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give it to them.
He uses the term life a few times, right?
Yeah.
Because if you keep the instructions, there will be life to you. That's not too difficult for you. Right. 32, verse 46 and 47.
That's what I did, and I read 46, but I didn't read 47.
Okay.
You want me to read it again?
Please.
And he said to them, set your hearts on the word which I have testified against you, that you command your sons to take heed to do all the words of the Torah, for it is not a useless word for you, for it is your life. And by this word you will prolong the days in the land where you are crossing over the Jordan, there to possess it.
Okay. So all three link come back to the same simple truth. It's not talking about eternal, right? Because for that you have to be sinless. We're not, we're falling short. Therefore we need someone to take upon our sins upon himself, Isaiah 53 reality. But if you want life, you're going to follow the one who did it. Right? You're going to replicate his ways. You're going to stick to God. He's the one who gave us life. These are his instructions. So when Yeshua references the way, and you pick it up now because you're looking for it. In Genesis 18, this is the way in which he went. Right? He's going, okay, what is the link that I'm coming back to? One more layer, if you will indulge me. I know not all of you do the Hebrew thing, so I'm going to try and do this way, yeah, is what we call derech. No. Okay, if I put a CH, it's a voice. Right. So if we look at the derech, I'm going to focus on that in a minute. Dalet. Right? There's a funny illusion that comes to a prophecy. Yehuda or Judah. Okay? You see that same letter, yes? It's a Dalet. Dalet. It's over there. If I take that out, what letters do I have left? I'm writing in Hebrew from right to left. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Where's the door or the way to Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey? Yes, Yeshua. Coming from the tribe of?
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
Another way does that come from? Wow.
Okay? Next funny little Hebrew truth. The word for truth in Hebrew is emet. Right? Emet. Now here we have something called an aleph and a tav. The first and the last. So if you want to know truth, you have to have, which is Yeshua. Now here's an interesting one. If I take the Aleph away, if I take God, the first, the strong, and I remove him, I'm left with another Hebrew word called Met. What's Met mean? Death.
Well, the men is water, chaos, and blood.
It's
Yeah.
water. You can also have it with, like if it's just the mem in the middle. Sorry.
Yeah,
We're
but you
distracting.
can. Yeah, you're going down that road.
From Aleph, you have to go through the water to get to Tav.
100%.
Okay, sorry, yeah,
But
there.
we can't play that value again. But if I take the first out, if I take God out of truth, I'm left with nothing but death.
The wages of sin.
Off to.
All right.
The crazy thing is, I don't even know Hebrew, and I don't know Greek, but I said death before you even wrote it down.
Now we start to see the character, right? Now again, we can play the value again. The first, what? What does mem represent?
Water.
Water, blood, or chaos? To the cross. Okay, so ultimately it points back to the baptism and so on. But we're not going to go down that road. Because you've got enough of your brain capacity going on here.
Hey.
Chaim. Chaim. Life.
Is it Chaim? Is it
Chaim. Yeah, as in life abundant. It's not just a chaim.
Oh, right, okay.
So when we talk about Chaim, it's interesting. You've got in the hand of God, in a sense. Right? In what illustration will the hand of God, or one on either side, represent? So God still have the. Okay, so here comes into Chaim. Interesting little snippets, isn't it?
Mm.
We can take it one more further. Ha is the word for the. This one has and verb. So vav So here's another little play. Find the door, God has to reveal it. To find truth, God reveals it. Or should I say Him? And to get to life comes through a nail and revelation.
It's like confirmation upon confirmation upon confirmation.
Yeah. And it's the same as when we go down to the Yudhe buffet, right? A hand will reveal, a nail to reveal. Basically what it boils down to in paleotext. Just 4 pictures put together that we create spelling attachments to and function reality. But the hand will reveal the nail.
It's just crazy. I just can't understand how a person would write Hebrew. Because you write from here and there. So how do you know all the things? I just can't fathom how you can write backwards and read it.
Actually, they found out that every child, regardless of nationality and otherwise, actually starts writing logically from the right side all the way. We actually get trained to do it the other way around.
And I read something else, something that people was doing with children that,
It's natural.
they're changing children right from they think not like they meant to be.
I also, when I get a magazine, I always open from the back.
Apparently no. Anyway,
To me, I always get a picture of the Hebrew, the way it's walking from the west and you're going to the east, to the truth.
right, going back up. Okay, do you guys have anything you want to add? Giving you enough to chew on? We'll finish up with chapter 18, going to 19 next week.
I wouldn't mind asking a question. I think I had to run. I don't know if you got to it, Matthew, the parable, Matthew
13.
13:33.
Yeah.
What you did mention, what was the big picture in that parable?
Yeah. Kingdom of Heaven.
The kingdom of heaven, you have at the leaven. It talks about 3, and only when there's no leaven.
No, okay. All right. Why don't you read Matthew 13?
Okay.
Let's address that
I
quickly.
didn't need it. I just wanted to be, if you don't mind clarifying that for me.
Matthew 13:33.
Okay. He spoke another parable to them. The kingdom of heaven is compared to leaven, which, taking a woman, hid 3 measures of meal until the whole was leavened.
Yes.
So, so in other words, when everything's sorted, I don't know.
In leaven, biblically, is that a good or a bad thing?
No, it's been unleavened is better because then you've got no sin.
Only if you apply it to a Passover reality. Okay, and then Yeshua would say something like, okay, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. And he says, okay, well, and then they sit there and we're like, well, we didn't bring bread again. He's upset about that. It was about their teaching, right? That which comes in and creates it to puff up. So they think that the tradition should overrule the instruction. And if you think about it, that's pretty much the same mistake we've been making for generations. Going to any congregation or any denomination, if your tradition overrules the text, we have a problem. We're not doing it God's way anymore, we're doing it man's. And I can look at that from a Jewish standpoint, and I say that very respectfully, and I can say that in a Christian standpoint, we've done the same. The narrow road that you're on is ultimately getting it right the way God said it and leaving man at the door. Okay? If you want interpretation, go to Yeshua. Okay? Now, in saying that, what feast allows for leavened bread? There's only one. Shavuot. Why Shavuot?
Because there's a celebration.
Of what?
Wheat.
Is it just wheat?
I think it's going to be Yeshua coming back.
What did we receive? We left Egypt and then we went to Sinai. What did you receive at Sinai?
The Torah.
The Torah. Okay, but now all of a sudden the leaven that God gives is what's it going to do? It's going to amplify and going to reveal the ultimate reality. The 2 breads, otherwise the 2 stone tablets. And he's like, this is the leaven, this is the bread from heaven, this is what you eat. If you eat of my teaching, and you take that and you ingest it, not the leaven of the Pharisees, but the leaven from heaven. It's a different picture altogether. It's the only feast, the only time you're allowed to bring leaven in for a celebration. The rest of the time you don't do it. Only if the leaven comes from God. Now if you take that and you apply it to the parable of the kingdom of heaven, and he says, if you take some of that covenant, God visiting Abraham, and he goes, now we're going to share a meal, one. Number two, we're going to create, we're going to have a son. Number three, he's establishing the promises that he had already promised him before. The kingdom of heaven is like, when you receive God's instruction or you receive God's truth, your identity starts to change. Sarai, Sarah. Avram, Avram. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it says, until the whole was leavened.
The whole what?
The whole,
The whole what?
the three,
If you were applying it to Sarah, what would you say? Or not just to Sarah, but to the camp. If I were to take that little bit of truth, right, from heaven, and I were to apply it into you, do I stop mixing it only when some of you know the fullness of the truth?
The whole body.
then you need to spread it with.
Then we're going to make sure that everybody gets a piece of that bread, so everybody partakes. Just like when Sarah fed the entire community when God visited.
Yeah.
Receive that promise, receive that covenant, receive the truth. Yeah?
Probably a little bit like with the multiplication of the bread and the fishes, and then also when the father was saying, look at the leaven of the Pharisees, and he wasn't talking about. He was basing it on what you just said, on his principle of that
Versus
leaven that must get
the leaven's
everywhere,
understanding.
yeah, and everywhere. Yeah.
So I understand it like, for example, the end is also only going to come when everybody has heard the word. I don't know how to leaven. Everybody's had a bit of a piece of it, whether everybody's going to.
That's an eschatology debate, which we're not going to go down that road.
Okay. I just
But
sort of looked at that from the fact that everybody needs to have heard the
In this
word.
context, when you receive the kingdom of heaven, it's going to permeate and permeate and permeate into the entire house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a lot of focus. We often put the focus on those who was here, but the question is, are we speaking? That's more for me the focus is here. But anyway, that's a story for another day.
All right. Any other?
I do want to share something that is really amazing. And did you say you have to go? Because I think you're really going to be blessed by this as well.
No, I'm not.
No, she said she had to step outside, I think.
Oh, right, okay. So can I, okay, this is about Psalm 119, which I've done, I've been studying it for many years. I'm fascinated by it. So, if we only had Psalm 119, we would be able to go so far, But, and what caught my attention is the use of the word quicken. Well, what is it in your Bible? Psalm 119, verse 25. Quicken me according to you.
Under 19.
25.
Verse 25.
Yeah.
And I prostrate in the dust, revive me in keeping with your word.
Okay. So your old Bibles can probably say revive, but the Hebrew there is chaya, to live or to have life. So this is repeated 11 times. That concept of quicken me, quicken me, quicken me. And I've been working with this now for 4 years. Where when I feel my thoughts going down or whatever, I'm all by myself on the mission field in a foreign land and there's no one to encourage me or to see that I'm struggling and whatever, I pray this, like all 11 of them in a row, But now what I want to do, just in terms of what you said about the way, the truth, and the life, this is for encouragement for us when we start, when we have those days when we forget. and we start believing in who we are and our fallen self, whatever. Then I say, Father, quicken me according to your word. And I like really dramatize this. I'm like, quicken me, Father, because it's like, it's that sort of reviving, you know, the spirit that rose Messiah from the dead is in us, you know, and to like fan into flame your faith, you know. So I'm going to read through that, and maybe if you want to see where it fits in with way, truth, life, you know. So in 25, that's the first mention there in Psalm 119. My soul cleaves unto the dust. Quicken me according to your word. I mean, isn't that the truth? And then verse 37, turn away my eyes from beholding vanity and quicken me in your way. So there we have the way. And then verse 50, this is my comfort in my affliction, for your word has quickened me, which it does always so well. And then the next one is verse 88. Quicken me after your loving kindness. Yeah, it's the truth in action, right? So shall I keep the testimony of your mouth, and then verse 93. I will never forget your precepts. That's Torah. For with them you have quickened me. And then verse 107. I'm afflicted very much. Quicken me, O Lord, according to your word. Which is, here we go again. And then 149, hear my voice, according unto your loving kindness, O Yahweh, quicken me according to your judgment. Oh, when I pray that, I say it with the fear of the Father. 156, great are your tender mercies, O Yahweh, quicken me according to your judgments. Oh, I skipped one. 154, plead my cause and deliver me. Quicken me according to your word. Again, the word. And then 159, consider how I love your precepts. Quicken me, O Yahweh, according to your loving kindness. So if we look at the way, the truth, and the life, and when we feel we're not moving in that, because that is what the world needs, that what we were purposed for and everything, I've just declared war. Honestly, this is on my wall in my house. I just go and stand in front of it and I just declare each one of them, quicken me, and I like really amp myself up until there's like the darkness is banished, you know. That's also not just life when you're single, you know. There's nobody who sees, oh, you're a little bit down, or when they pray for you, or whatever. You know, we've got a single ones we have to like really learn to do that battle. This has really, really helped me. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, one more thing. You spoke about something that go to Daniel chapter 4.
4.
Yeah, I actually wrote this down and I never got to it. Daniel 4, if you're in the CJB, it's 34. If you are in anything else, it's verse 37. Daniel 4, verse 37. Yeah. It should start with, so now I Nebuchadnezzar. Right, because I found this quite interesting. So Nebuchadnezzar comes to faith in a sense. Just before that he says, he praises and gives honor to him who lives forever, to God Most High. He says, for his rulership is everlasting, his kingdom endures through all generations. All who live on earth and are counted as nothing. He does what he wishes in the army of heaven, and with those living on earth, no one can hold back his hand and ask him, what are you doing? Now we jump to verse 34 in the CJB, 37 probably in yours. So now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are truth, and his ways are just, and he can humble those who walk in pride. The way, the truth, and the life declared by a king who just received salvation. And on that note, shall we pray?
Hallelujah.
Sure.
Vince,
Yeah, no, you can. We'll leave it, we'll pray, and then we'll switch it. It's only family anyway. This is making it work.
No, I don't want to do that.
Father, we just want to thank you again for this time. Father, we thank you for our family and for this time of study. And as we just look back, Father, so we can look to Yeshua and we can look forward, we just want to thank you for the word that you spoke today. Thank you for helping us, and I pray that you help us, Father, as we go out, that we would walk in this identity, that we would walk in the way, the truth, and the life, Father. And we just pray that as you continue to fill us with your word, or as you have filled us, Father, and we surrender more and more, Father, I just pray that your will be done, that people will see you in our hands and our feet and hear you on our lips. For your glory, Father. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Vince.
Yes, Joe.
Jesus.